All right, welcome to our annual debate around the theory of evolution. Today our esteemed guests are going to take the proposition side that evolution is a fact, and I will let Dr. Leo speak to that here in just a minute. The MAK students, you will be taking the opposition side to that. We will follow the traditional format debate. The proposition side will speak for 2.5 minutes, and then the opposition will speak 2.5 minutes, and then a second speaker for 2.5 minutes, and then we'll go back. And we're going to go back and forth till everybody's had a chance to lay out their arguments. At the end, we have allowed a little bit of time for an open rebuttal. So if you are speaking today, please state your name very clearly so that all of us can hear it, those who are speaking and those who are participating in the audience. We would like to be able to call you by your name and ask a specific question if we're unclear on your points, okay? So welcome to our guests. Welcome MAK students. There are a few seats scattered around. If you need more seats, we can find some, okay? All right, Dr. Liu?
Okay, this is a great time. Every year, I think we have had this great tradition. I think this is a special form of education. In the past, both of our students have really gained experience, and this is a special time. And for my students, they are in my scientific English course. The purpose for them is to develop language skills. And we use debate to integrate reading, writing, listening, and speaking into this. Of course, there's research involved. You have to get the facts, organize the facts, and articulate it in 2.5 minutes. So just a little bit brief about the rules. And my assistant, Christy, will keep the timer. The first bell will go up at 2 minutes. That just gives you a warning that you have 30 seconds left. And then the second bell will ring at 2 minutes and 15 seconds. That means you need to wrap up. You only have 15 seconds left. And the third bell, when the third bell rings, I'm going to kick you off the podium. So, and for the free rebuttal, this is a new element we introduced last time, and to make the debate more lively. And each challenger has 1 minute to state that the issue that you want to challenge your opponent. So the challenged also has 1 minute to respond. So, and we will see how it goes. I encourage you, both sides, and to listen to your argument, find if there's a problem, it's not factual or there's a faulty logic, so challenge that person, okay? And so I hope, before we start, would students, MAK students that will be debating today, would you stand? And we have a special peace offering for you. And would you please stand? Yes. Yeah. As our team captain will give you a little present. Okay. Yeah. Okay, yeah. There are different colors. You can pick your favorite color. Okay. Okay, sit down. Once you receive the gift, please be seated. Peter, there are two. There are two here. Peter, there are two. Okay, now the diplomacy is out of the way, so let the debate begin. I'm going to call this, okay, so each speaker has a sequence, so this marks your status. So first, proposition constructed. You have 2.5 minutes.
Hello everyone, my name is Sharon. Today, our team will support evolution is a fact. At first, I'm going to introduce what is the exactly evolution theory in a simple way. Darwin formulated evolution theory in 1859, contained two main ideas. One is that all living things share a common ancestor. If go back far enough, all creatures are literally related. And the other is that evolution occurred by natural selection. Natural selection explains how one species evolved into the other depends on the change in a heritable trait, and then selected by environment. Just like Darwin said, survival of the fittest. If the species can't adapt the environment, it may not survive for a long time. Besides, theory of evolution is used to explain how living things change over a long time and how they have come to be the way they are. In our team's position, nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of theory, evolution. And because many research directions in biology cannot avoid the problems of evolution, and even rely on the foundation of evolution, like biodiversity and systematic. So there's no reason to say that evolution is a fiction. Instead, it's really important to us. Thank you.
First, the opposition constructive.
Yay. Okay. If I could prove to you that it is impossible for evolution to even begin in the first place, would you agree that much of what we know about evolution would therefore be invalid? My name is Megan, and this is what I will be focusing on, while my teammates will elaborate on what comes after and provide rebuttals. The Miller-Urey Experiment is used by evolutionists to prove how organic compounds initially formed. But this only half works, even if the conditions were exactly as Miller manipulated it to be. One of the compounds produced by Miller was amino acids. And there are different structures in amino acids, namely left-handed amino acids and right-handed ones. And this is incredibly important because amino acids that make up proteins have to be 100% left-handed. And what textbooks fail to include is that Miller actually produced left and right-handed amino acids, which are useless for life, and that makes this experiment partly invalid. The law of biogenesis states that only life can produce life. So where did these first elements come from? I know you're gonna say that elements aren't alive, which is exactly why cells that are living can't form from them. Another idealistic assumption made by evolutionists is that Earth started in an oxygen-free environment. And they say this because oxygen destroys amino acids and evolution wouldn't have been possible otherwise. However, if there was no oxygen, the ozone wouldn't exist, and the UV rays would destroy the molecules anyway. So what I'm saying is that if there was oxygen, life can't start. But if there wasn't oxygen, life still can't start. So it's basically a lose-lose situation. Now I will hand the stage over to Annette, my partner, who will be continuing my argument by talking about how, through the miracle that organisms could even be formed in the first place, the actual process of evolution is impractical and untrue. Thank you.
How can a car function as a car without an engine? Just like evolution, teachers at school teach students that evolution is true, assuming that evolution is already a fact. However, there are many loopholes in which evolutionists cannot prove right, and today I'll be elaborating on these points. Now, the previous speaker had mentioned about how they can only rely on the theory of evolution, yet there are no specific facts that support your point, and today I'll be talking about these. So first of all, today we can't see any forms of evolution. We can't see any forms of animals evolving, so how can we prove that evolution is true? Darwin once explained that his theory led to him to believe that the number of intermediate varieties which have formerly existed on the earth must be truly enormous. He also understood that these intermediate forms of life, and there are no fossil records that did not document these intermediate forms of life. This is perhaps the most obvious and gravest object which can be urged against his theory. Today, out of thousands of species known for the fossil record, only a small fraction are claimed to be candidates for Darwin's intermediate forms. Fossil evidence is generally lacking. The absence of fossil evidence has been persistent and nagging problems for gradualistic accounts of evolution. There are also no fossils yet discovered that form a transitional form from their parent group. Evolutionists state that there are many transitional forms, yet billions of fossils have been found are all incomplete forms. A true transitional form would have non-functional parts, meaning that evolution never occurred. Next, I'll be talking about the intelligence gap between humans and animals. How does evolution explain the large gap in intelligence between humans and all other species? Animals would never understand human reasoning or be able to do what humans can do. Some animals can use tools to some degree, but they are still limited to what they can do. Next, where did emotions such as love, hate, and jealousy come from? And what are the odds that evolution process, proceeding by random changes, produce human beings? Next, in conclusion, since there aren't enough fossil records since today that fits Darwin's theory of evolution, and no way to explain the intelligence gap between humans and animals, wouldn't this prove the theory of evolution wrong? Until the opposition team is able to answer these questions, the theory of evolution still remains as a false evidence. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Peter. My team today is going to support the evolution theory is a fact. After my teammate Sharon talked about the theory of evolution, some people may say that is not truth because that is only a hypothesis or there is no enough evidence. But have you guys ever thought the Big Bang theory is a fiction? Big Bang theory is to explain how the universe formed. If you haven't, why? You also cannot go back to about 40 million years ago to see how it happened. Here, I need to tell you that evolution theory is not just a hypothesis. There are some evidences to prove it. And my teammates are going to give you guys at least 5 evidences later. These evidences include biogeography, the fossil record, comparative anatomy, DNA comparison, and natural selection. And in fossil record issue, my teammate will show you some intermediate fossil record. And I also want to mention natural selection is the core of the evolution theory. These evidences all indicate one thing. That thing is the evolution theory is a fact. After introducing the evidences my team has, I want to ask my opponents a question. We all know oxygen is essential for terrestrial organisms, and oxygen concentration in the atmosphere was low until cyanobacteria come to the world. And in other words, the life must begin in the ocean and evolve into terrestrial organisms. So, if evolution theory is not a fact, why first organisms do not show up both on continents and in the ocean at the meantime? Thank you.
Second, proposition construction.
Hello everyone, I'm Junyi. The opinion of our team is the evolution is fact, and I will talk about the natural selection. I think the natural selection is a major part of evolution, and it is survival of the fittest. And the fittest will create an offspring which will later continue to have that trait. For example, the beetles. Some beetles are green and some beetles are brown. The green beetles turn to get eaten by birds and survive to reproduce less often than brown beetles do. Because the color of green beetles were more visible than the brown beetles when birds were eating in the trunk. Since the environment cannot support unlimited population growth, and all individuals get to reproduce to their full potential. After that, the survival rate of brown beetles were higher than green beetles, and the brown beetles have a brown baby beetles because of this trait, which color of beetles has a genetic basis. The more advantageous trait, brown coloration, which allows the beetles to have more offspring, becomes more common in the population. So the natural selection is when some genetically determined trait become more or less common in the wild because it survived better or worse in the environment than previously. That is, if the feature does poorly, then it isn't passing to the next generation and eventually dies out. If the feature does well, it continues and shows up more often. So the living creature have variation in trait and is heritable. I think it can prove that evolution is fact. And this is one of the major examples of direction selection. And then my teammate Edwin will explain more about the 3 modes of classification of natural selection to you later. Thank you.
Second opposition construction.
So, the carbon dating system or using the stratas to date the fossils are completely unreliable, therefore proving that fossils are useless as an evidence to prove that evolution exists. Allow me to explain why carbon dating and strata dating are both unreliable. So, first, let's do a thought experiment. If I were to lit a candle before this debate has started, and I show you the candle, and I ask you, how long has it been lit? Would you be able to answer me? No, because 2 things, you do not know how fast the candle is burning. Second, you do not know how long the candle is to begin with. Now, if we measure how fast the candle is burning, and you give me, say, it burns 1 centimeters per minute. That's pretty fast, but for purposes, just go along with it. Then there comes the question of how long was it to begin with? The scientists nowadays just assumed that the carbon-14s or whatever radioactive isotopes they are measuring are constant throughout the ages, which may or may not be true to begin with. So they assumed how long the candle is being, they measured how long it's burning right now, but they do not know if it was burning faster or slower earlier. Therefore, they cannot find the exact or even reliable length of the candles to begin with. And also, it is important to know that carbon dating is not reliable as of now also. There's live penguins that have been dated 8,000 years old. I don't know about you, but a penguin living about 8,000 years old sounds pretty ridiculous to me. So, also for stratas, it is completely unreliable as well because sediments can collect at different rates at different places first. And also, this causes them to build up at a different rate. So you cannot really compare stratas all around the world and just assume that they are, connected. And also, you might say that the fossils included in those stratas can prove that they are related, but the problem with that is you are using the stratas to tell us how old the fossil is, and then you are using the fossils to tell us how old the strata is. That is circular reasoning, and that does not prove anything.
Oh, I was going to say
Yeah,
that.
I
Dang
forgot.
it. Stole my
Second opposition rebuttal.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Daniel, and I'm part of the evolution side. Con-evolution side, where we believe that evolution is false. Okay, so I'm here to elaborate on what my partner Eric said, which was that there's not really any real way of telling the order of which organisms, through fossils and their carbon dating, you can't really tell which order they came in. So, okay, never mind, skip that. Fossils are widely used to prove that evolution is right, and it's easy to go along with because they always use their fancy words and their complex explanations to show you that they're right, but there are quite a few problems with fossils. First of all, their method of finding how old fossils are through carbon dating and other means is completely untrustworthy, and Eric has already explained how that works. Okay. Scientists use fossils to find little details in species to show that things evolved throughout the ages into what they are now. And the most common example is that primates evolved into humans now. So they use the similarities of our fossils to show that they slowly evolved into what we are now. But having said this, that would mean that one species kept gradually evolving into the other species, which we can assume that one species that gradually evolved would have died out. But as we know now, we still have primates and humans too. So evolutionists might not be able to use fossils to their advantage when proving their case, but as creationists we can, because we believe that a long time ago there was a huge flood that engulfed the whole earth, and there have been multiple accounts where scientists have found fossils of sea animals high in the mountains and way above sea level, and same species of land animals that are on completely different continents, like halfway around the world. And evolution shows no explanation as to why these fossils are so widespread out and why they're so high up. So until evolution can completely answer these questions, I believe that evolution is false along with us. Thank you. Okay.
Second proposition.
Thank you, Junyi and the candidate of opposite side. Good morning, everyone. I'm Edwin. I am now going to talk about three models of natural selections. First, the directional selections means an extreme phenotype is more favored than other phenotypes, causing the gene's frequency changes by time in direction of the phenotypes. The examples of beetles that Junyi has mentioned is the typical directional selection. Okay, secondly, the stabilizing selection, which is the most common mechanism of natural selection, means the population stabilizes on non-extreme trait values. It favors the intermediate individuals, but not the extreme one. And I'm now showing you the newborn phase selection of human. The x-axis in the first graph is the x-axis shows the newborn phase of babies, and the y-axis shows the percentage of population. And we can see most of the newborn babies, the weights are in the range of 6 to 8 pounds, and main born weight is 7.1 pounds. It's focusing on the intermediate value. And the second graph, we can see there is the same x-axis, and the y-axis shows the percentage of mortality. We can see the babies' weights in intermediate value have the lowest mortality, means they die less. Okay, last but not least, the disruptive selection means the individuals can develop extreme traits within the same environment. This phenomenon is common in environment without enough natural resources. And as an example, we assume that there are three colors of rabbits, the black, gray, and white one in the environment, and there are two kinds of rocks, black and gray one. And we can see the black and gray rabbits can hide next to the rock, which with the same color of them, but the white rabbits do not have enough place to hide, and the predators can hunt the white one. And after generations, the differences of amount between these three kinds of rabbits will be easily seen, and it comes to the extreme values. Okay, these are my point of view. As natural selection was proved and was classified into three models, evolution is a truth. Thank you.
Second proposition conducted.
Hello everyone, my name is Mars. Today I'm going to briefly introduce biogeography and give you a simple example. And then my teammates will introduce more examples for everyone more easily to understand it. First, what is biogeography? Believe that everyone had known it before from your teachers. Biogeography, which means a group of same species being separated from one another into different places, and then they would evolve into different forms in order to adapt to the environment. Continental drift, sea level change, or orogeny are all possible ways of separation. For example, Darwin's finches are a group of about 15 kinds of finches that inhabit the Galapagos Islands. They all come from a common ancestor. However, because of the geographical isolation, they had to evolve into different forms in order to survive in different environments. Then, when the main food on the island was seed, they had to evolve the beak into a larger and thicker one to smash the seeds. But when the main food on the island was insect, they had to evolve the beak into a longer and thinner one to eat the insects in the hollows of trees. Through this example, we can know that the same species will evolve into different forms due to the adaptation to the environment. Biogeography can not only support the theory of natural selection, but also can be one of the evidence of evolution. So we all believe that evolution is a fact. Thank you.
Third, proposition construction.
Okay. So my name is Koki, and in case you don't know how to spell it, it's K-O-K-I. And I'll be talking about why evolution is completely nonsense, and just by thinking logically, you can tell that evolution is false. So first of all, I would like to rebut their ideas. They talked about birds in different places where they have insects as food, change their beaks into thin ones, and where they eat seeds, they adapted their beaks into thick ones. But then that is only adaptation, and that doesn't involve another species changing into another species, like for example, fishes turning into land creatures, which is part of evolution, because they say that creatures came from seeds. And I believe natural selection is complete nonsense, because there's a fish called coelacanth, and I think many of you guys know that, and it's called a living fossil, and it has a lot of useless fins on their sides. And evolutionists say that they existed from a million years ago, but then it never changed. It never evolved. Why? Because evolution is not true. And evolutionists also say that there are transitional fossils will prove their theory, but right now none of them are found, and even some of them that are found were later proven to be a scam. For example, an Archaeopteryx fossil was claimed to be found, and two out of the 6 had feathers on it. But then it was later found that it was a fossil of a bird-sized dinosaur with a thin layer of cement imprinted with chicken feathers. And Charles Darwin himself also admitted that they were lacking evidence of transitional fossils, and he was hoping to find one and prove his theory, but he never found one. So
Therefore, I believe that evolution is nonsense.
Okay. Hi guys, my name is Othniel. So, connecting to Kohi's above statement, there are currently 4 found debatable transitional fossils in the world. Are the missing links so hard to find if there are so many creatures evolving? You can trace it forwards to see where life is heading, or backwards to meet our predecessors and see where we've been. If we are able to track back, then according to our logic, the law of natural selection could be proven right. But the fact that there are almost no obvious missing links appearing on this world would make concessions to Darwin's theory. And also, when the natural selection was just mentioned, Darwin states that all species of organisms arise and develop through natural selection in small variations that increases the individual's abilities to survive and adapt. But there was an experiment performed 8 years ago that led science into an alternative viewpoint towards natural selection. Basically, the experiment manipulated lighting inside a hen house to make the chickens stressed by confusing them over night and day, which disordered the chickens' life routine. Not surprisingly, the chickens' capacity for learning after the experiment decreased significantly. The chickens were then moved to a stress-free environment, where they hatched and raised chicks. Despite being raised in a stress-free environment, the chicks displayed a decreased ability to perform tasks on the whole, comparing with other chicks. Further tests revealed that the adult chickens have passed the stress onto their offspring genetically. It would seem, therefore, rather than genes mutating towards these who are having the best capacity for survival of the fittest, according to the natural selection, environmental conditions played a bigger part in offspring determinant than previously thought. For this, we can note that evolution is presented more as a hypothesis than a reasoning with firm facts. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Kuso. Our team thinks that biogeography can prove the evolution is true. We have a lot of evidence can prove that. The first example is microbial, an animal which have a bed to take care of their baby. Long time ago, Gondwana was a big land. Microbial was everywhere. When the mainland separated to 7 different places, most of microbial could survive. So they changed their way to take care of their baby. They didn't use bed anymore and became the Picenteria, like cat, dog, and human. Only Australian microbial still exists. That was why we can find a lot of different microbial in Australia. The second evidence is giraffe and the octopus. They came from the same accident, but long time ago, because of the pace drifted, make them acidated from them celebrate. And giraffe one live in Africa grassland, and octopi ones live in Africa frost. They look very different. Giraffe leg become longer and longer, and octopus one become more like a horse. These 2 examples show us animals will train themselves to fix them environment. This also shows us biogeography can support evolution is true. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Willie. I think I'm going to support that evolution is a fact. The fossil is an important clue to prove the relationship between the different organisms. The fossil is found in a very special situation and hard to completely remain until now. We have found a lot of fossil records to show that the organisms have changed over time even now. There is no direction or purpose of the evolution, so the variation is random. The natural selection chooses the adaptive. So some species extinct, and the survival species change over time. After a long time, the species become a different species. From a series of fossils, we can find out the change of the species and the time required to vary. We can also observe the transitional fossils to find both the trace of the ancestral species and its derived descendant species. Because the change is not linear, but like the branches of trees, some transitional fossils can only indicate that the high relationship between the species. I take the Hydrolysis for example. The Hydrolysis have 4 front toes, but the modern horses only have 1 front toe. And we also find the fossils of some organisms like horses with 2 and 3 front toes. And the Hydrolysis is adapted to live in the forest, but the modern horse is adapted to live in the grassland. And we also found that the most current vertebrates have the relationship of each species can be proved by the lack of transitional fossils. So we can prove the evolution by the fossil record. Thank you.
The fourth, opposition construction.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Ray, and this is my partner, Connor. And today we are arguing against the motion that evolution is false. And I'll be stating our claims, and Connor is going to rebut the opponent and reinforcing my claim as well. First, I would like to define our term. That the theory of evolution states that all species of organism develop through natural selection of variations that will increase the individual's ability to compete and reproduce. However, we are talking about microevolution. No, we are talking about macroevolution, not microevolution, which is the change from one species to another. And so evolution is claimed that life evolved from single-celled organisms to humans over millions of years. However, time doesn't make something impossible possible. Evolutionists seek to use fossils to prove that evolution is true. However, just like what my classmate Eric have said, carbon dating is inaccurate because the carbon-14 isotope in the atmosphere is not always constant. And it has not always been stable either. Therefore, it fluctuates a lot since the beginning of Industrial Revolution, when we start burning our fossil fuels, and it disrupts the balance of carbon-14 in the atmosphere. Therefore, it cannot be fully trusted. And quote from Charles Darwin's Origin of Species, published in 1859, he stated that by the theory of natural selection of all living species that have been connected with parent species of each, now generally extinct, have similarly connected to a more ancient species, and so on backwards, and always converge to a common ancestor. And so the number of intermediate and transitional links of all living and extinct species must have been inconceivably great. And so if evolution was to be true, Charles Darwin, then people would have found those transitional links that connect one species to another. However, over a few hundred years of digging around 7 continents, we still haven't found those evidence. Therefore, we believe that the resolution should fall. And with that, I would like to end my speech. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Connor, and I'll be helping my partner, Ray, argue against the theory of evolution. I will be building his argument with some quotes of mine that I found that state that the theory of evolution is false. But first of all, I'd like to rebut some of the things my opponents have said. So first of all, my opponent has said that with fossil records we can see changes in species throughout the decades and the millennia. However, we see rapid changes, we see huge changes. We don't see the gradual change that evolution implies when we talk about the theory of evolution. The jumps are simply too big for us to realize that species A changed to species B by suddenly sprouting 2 pairs of wings and a big nose. So then, where are the transitional fossils that Darwin has claimed should exist? Well, I'm just going to say there aren't any transitional fossils. So scholars like Ashby Camp, the author of Myth of Origins, and Dr. Duane Gish, a biochemist and another author, they have documented that the transition of fossils, that they cannot find any. Since many popular arguments for transitional fossils are whales and how whales evolved from land creatures to sea creatures. Yet these two authors and the biochemists have discovered that these 4 animals that people believe to be different stages of whale evolution are actually distinct organisms of the similar species, but different branches of the tree, of the organism tree. So, I quote, "Rather, Darwinian beliefs must be imposed on selectively cited fossil evidence with many assumptions to see our Darwinian transformation, stating that we must choose to selectively choose one species to make Darwinian evolution, a thing that encompasses all of animal evolution, to work." So if I were to quote another author, Robert G. Weston, the author of Beyond Natural Selection, he said, "The gaps in fossil record are real, and to paraphrase, species are never changing, or almost never change, and usually only adapt, which is not what we are here today. We are here to debate macroevolution and adaptation, and microevolution, unlike what many have gone before me have said, is not valid." So to end this, I would like to use a quote. And I'm paraphrasing. I fully agree with a quote with Dr. Colin Patterson, a senior paleontologist of the British Museum of Natural History. And I'm paraphrasing. I fully agree with your comments on the lack of direct illustration of evolutionary transition in my book. If I knew any fossil were living, I would certainly have included them. I could not honestly provide it, but such stories are not part of science, and there is no way of putting them to test. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sunny. In my opinion, I think the evolution theory is true. Here are some instances about transitional fossils records. And the first one is an early bird. As you can see, it has long been accepted that the early bird was a transitional form between birds and reptiles, and that it is the earliest known birds. Certainly had feathers, although whether these feathers were used for regulating its body temperature or flight is a matter still open for debate. And the second one is Tiktaalik fish. Better known as fish pod, is a 375 million years old fossil fish and is the very first fish ventured out onto land, as you can see. Tiktaalik has a mix of fish and amphibian traits. Tiktaalik looks like a cross between the primitive fish it lived amongst and the first four-legged animals. The four-legged. And the third one is Pakicetus innatus, bears the title of the first whale. Pakicetus lived along the margins of a large shallow ocean. Although it had the body of the land animal, its head had the distinctive long skull shape of the whales. And the last one here is the Australopithecus, is one of the longest lived and the best known early human species. Had both ape and human characteristics. Members of this species have ape-like face proportions, a flat nose, a strongly projecting lower jaw, and brain case, with a small brain, usually less than 500 cubic centimeters, about 1/3 the size of the modern human brain, and long, strong arms with curved fingers adapted for climbing trees. These 4 records above, I think, can prove that the evolution theory is a fact. Thank you.
Okay, we now take a 5 minute vacuum break. Only for vacuum. 5 minutes.
We are going to resume at number 5. Is that correct? Fifth proposition construction? All right.
Hello everyone, my name is Joyce. Comparative anatomy is the study of differences and similarities in the anatomy of different species. It is an evidence of common descent, and it has assisted in the animal classification. Two major ideas of comparative anatomy are homologous and analogous structure. Here, I want to talk about its homologous structure. There are significant similarities between different species because the species have divergently evolved from a shared ancestor, and they may or may not have the same function. And there is an example, like where share the same following structure with bat, cat, and human. And you can see they all have the same basic pattern of bone. They inherit this pattern from a common ancestor. Next, I want to talk about vestigial organs. They are organs which are almost lost their original function. For example, modern whales do not have back legs, but they do have a strange pair of bones where their hind leg should be. And I want to ask my opponent, Connor. You say you don't believe whales evolved from land creatures. Then how can you explain this useless organism? And here is a picture of bone-haired whale. You can see that this bone almost looks like shovel, hip, thigh, and shin bone. It also has a ball and socket joint between the hip and thigh bone, just like yours in your own hip. The other example is human appendix. Long time ago, it was used to digest food, but today it is useless. Vestigiality is an evidence for evolution because it only makes sense if evolution has occurred. Overall, we believe evolution is a fact. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Beckham and this is my partner James. And today I'm going to talk about pangenesis by Charles Darwin. Pangenesis is a theory that proves evolution is real, and I'm trying to prove that it's actually a false statement. When Charles Darwin first introduced this theory to the public, he said that cells are capable of shedding particles called gemmules. These particles are then transmitted to the next generation, with the responsibility of the transmission of characteristics from parent to offspring. He then expanded his idea by saying that these particles are molded by the environment of an organism, which then influence its offspring. But when Darwin's younger half-cousin, Francis Galton, came out to design an experiment of blood transfusion on differently pigmented rabbits to test its validity, he found no evidence of Darwin's gemmules. To expand on my view, if an organism needs specific characteristics in order to survive in certain atmosphere and environment, then its body will develop to acquire that trait, which is possible. The error of pangenesis was that the theory does not correspond to the DNA genetic variation of the offspring. An organism simply does not acquire a certain trait immediately. Genetic variation with the theory of the survival of the fittest caused evolution to occur in generations. For example, dark-colored fur mice survive better in polluted environment than white-colored fur mice. So over time, the white mice will disappear from the population in that area. On the other hand, dark-colored fur mice will produce more and more offspring. This error has caused a big damage on the validity of evolution. And I think evolution is false because if it's evolution, then there can't be any false statement or error in it. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is James and I'm going to be adding onto Beckham's information about why evolution is wrong. There's a theory led by Charles Darwin called the warm pond theory. It's where life arose from a small little pond. But there was a study several decades ago by a scientist named Miller-Urey. However, this experiment was completely rigged, and he ran a mixture of gases through heat and electricity, and it formed a tar-like substance that formed amino acids. But the experiment left out a key part would completely ruin the experiment. He forgot or purposely left out oxygen, which was 100% there when forming life from the pond. Therefore, amino acids wouldn't be able to form with the pond theory of his. Another reason why evolution is wrong is that it fails to see that there's a limit of variations of species. People believe that with enough time, evolutionists believe that with enough time, an animal can change into a completely different species. But for instance, a pigeon turning into an eagle. A famous study led by Charles Darwin went to different islands looking at finches, but they had different beaks. He proved that, many evolutionists think that this totally proves evolution, but in reality it doesn't prove anything. The finches are still finches. They didn't change species at all. Another reason why I think evolution is wrong is, like, for instance, if there's bricks on the ground, over time it won't just turn into some type of mansion or anything. Yeah, thank you.
Morning, guys. I'm Wee. After my partner's introduction of homologous structures, I would like to talk about analogous structures. Please take a look at these pictures. Here we can see the different analogous structures. There's a bat wing, the butterfly wing, and the bird wing. All of these wings have exact same functions. They allow the animal to fly. So we can know that an analogous structure is the structure what provides same function, but we should realize that these have very different structures underneath. That is, the bat wing has bones and some tissues that spread over them. The butterfly wing is made out of cartilage. The bird wing has muscles and feathers. The important information we need to take away from the analogous structure is that they all end up being able to accomplish the same function while they have different structures. This does not show common ancestry because the butterfly and the bird have evolved separately from each other, but it shows convergent evolution, and this is the idea that this function in our case gives a species an advantage to fly, so they are better able to adapt and survive in their environment. Therefore, we've seen many organisms end up with this exact same function, even though they came to it with different structures. Overall, the homologous structures mentioned by my partners provides the evidence of common ancestry, while the analogous structures I talked about is to demonstrate convergent evolution. I surely believe that we've already brought you guys the exact explanation of why we consider evolution a fact. Finally, let me ask you opponents a question. If that evolution theory can explain how the first life appeared on the Earth makes you think that evolution is not the fact, I would say that the quantum mechanics can explain where the electron came from. But would you think that the quantum mechanics is nonsense? Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Tim. Today I want to talk about my opinion about evolution. First, I think evolution is a fact. Nitrogenous basis is a very powerful evidence. There are 4 nitrogenous bases in DNA. It's A, T, G, and C. And the DNA can store and transfer the message of gene. And the 3 nitrogenous bases can form a different genetic code. This 3 nitrogen bases can form a protein. DNA can replicate itself and transfer a genetic message to a new DNA, and the genetic code can translate the protein. And the protein is the basic composition of the cells. And all life on Earth has a protein. So the life on the Earth comes from a common ancestor. Second, we know all lives on Earth are composite of the cells, and all the cells have DNA as a genetic code. Now, the DNA of all lives on Earth is formed by 4 types of nitrogenous bases, which is A, T, G, and C. This situation says all lives on Earth are coming from the original species. So base of DNA can transfer and store the message of the gene, and the nitrogenous basis of all lives on Earth is the same types. Therefore, I think the evolution is the truth. And the mutation is the power of evolution. The mutation which happens in the gene can pass down to the next generation by meiosis. So today, if the one species mutates a new features, and this feature helps them to adapt the environments after a long time, they generate the reproductive isolation. They will become a new species. And if they can adapt the environment, they will disappear by natural selection. Mutation on gene is the power to enhance evolution. So I think the evolution is credible. Thank you.
6, opposition constructive.
Okay, hi, my name is Sophia, and this is my partner Alice. And I just want to compare DNA to a book. So, do you think this book could have made itself? Well, obviously not. And do you think that all of these colors and words could come together, that when you open a book, you can read it perfectly and everything will be in order? Well, I think that that cannot happen, obviously. So, like a book, DNA is a living book of information, like organism that is full of complex information and little machines that had an obvious design to it. And so a DNA is the information in your body that makes you unique, right? So while making a book by itself is like making DNA by itself. That's impossible. When you read a book, it's obvious that there's a person that had to make this book. Like when you look at DNA and everything inside of it, there has to be a creator for DNA. So when there's a book author, there's a DNA author. Evolutionists say, here's a question for evolutionists. How does the information in DNA produce itself? Well, some evolutionists would say that many, many years ago, DNA would produce itself from nothing. Well, if we take this book and got it many, many years ago, could it produce itself by nothing? I don't think so. So creationists say that God created humans and DNA already inside of them. Here's another question for evolutionists. Where did the cells even come from to make DNA? How did it appear from nothing, spontaneous generation? So DNA is not just in humans, but in every living thing. Plants, dogs, animals, everything. So do you think DNA happened by accident? By saying DNA happened by accident is sillier than saying a book happened by accident is sillier than saying DNA happened by accident. So there's DNA has an intelligent designer, like book has an intelligent designer. Okay, so I'm done.
So the first thing we should keep in mind is that ape DNA and human DNA are different from each other. Humans usually have 42 chromosomes in total, whereas apes have 48. If humans really did evolve from apes, then how do you explain the fact that apes who have 48 chromosomes evolved into humans and now have 42 chromosomes? A species cannot change the number of chromosomes in the DNA. Another thing that we should keep in mind is that Charles Darwin said in his book, The Origin of Species, quote, "If it could be demonstrated that any complex organ structure existed which could not have been formed by numerous successive slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down," end quote. Bill Gates had described DNA as a software program, but it's much more complex than anything we've been able to design. On a book called In the Beginning by Walt Brown, it has been stated that the information contained in all the chromosomes of one human being, if typed out, would fill enough books to fill the Grand Canyon 78 times. The same book has also stated that the probability of just one DNA arranging itself by chance has been calculated 1 chance in 10 to the 19,000 power. The entire visible, that's a lot comparing to the entire visible universe, which is 10 to the 28 inches in diameter. So basically, even Charles Darwin said that if he could find a complex organ structure, which in this case could be DNA, his theory would break down. Charles Darwin himself stated that his theory is already flawed.
Your name is? Alice. Alice. The 6th, proposition rebuttal.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Wayne. Let's don't talk about the mechanism. Let's talk about the evidence. Our teammate and I support that evolution is true by the theory mentioned by team. Okay. So DNA can prove that evolution is a fact. Why? DNA are the most important and basic things which compose the nucleus, and it has the information inside that decide how we act and what we look like. Okay, here's the evidence. Scientists found that there are 6 similar structures on chromosomes of modern human and a chimpanzee which was caused by the RNA virus infection. Actually, the scientists also found several infected signals on the other mammals' chromosome, like pig or cow. And so that is, in very long time ago, our common ancestor has been infected by this virus and passed down this information through the meiotic division. Okay, if we take the chimpanzee's DNA and light it up with modern humans, although one is 64 and another is 68, the chromosome look the same and the gene order line up in the same order, like this, you can see. And in fact, by analysis, 99% of our DNA is identical to that of a chimpanzees. This evidence shows not only a very close relationship between chimps and modern human, but also the fact that chimps and modern human come from a common ancestor. So let me state again. DNA are the most important and basic thing in our body. If we deny the DNA, then we deny ourselves. So, since we can't say that it's wrong, then it is true. That's why our teammate and I suppose the evolution is true. Thank you, everyone.
Hello everyone, I'm Ed. As mentioned at the beginning, nothing in the biology makes sense except in the evolution. To prove the evolution is a fact, my teammate mentioned 5 evidence: DNA, fossil record, comparative autonomy, natural selection, and the geographical isolation. First, DNA. DNA is a powerful evidence. Human has a quite similar sequence compared to another mammal like chimpanzee or gorilla. In fact, 99% of our DNA is identical to that of chimpanzee. Next is fossil record. We are so lucky to find the Archaeopteryx fossil. It is a witness to let us know a species can cross over to another species, reptile to bird. Third is comparative autonomy. We can find different species homologous structure. Look at the catfish and the whale forelimb. They are different species. They are different species, but they all have same structure: arm, wrist, finger, and hand. Fourth is natural selection. Because of the natural selection, there is a motivation for evolution, just the example of my teammate talked about. The last is geographical isolation. A group of species live in different environments. After a long time, they will produce reproductive isolation. They become different species. All this evidence show the core of evolution. All species have the same ancestor. The theory of evolution is never stopped, and it happened to you and me. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm Alex, and today I would like to start my argument with the horse series. The horse series is a series of fossils that evolutionists put together, even though that there are no relationship between them. That person, he put up a picture of the horse legs, but actually they might have just found the leg with 5 fingers, but they don't even have any information to prove that it is in the series. So evolutionists have their own predetermined series, and they don't even know where the bones come from, so that can be true. There are other evolution-proving fossils found by scientists. I will just list 2, the Piltdown Man and the Java Man. They're both determined a hoax, so they're not true too. So many evolutionists have explained that when organisms adapt to an environment, they show evolution. But actually, organisms can't change what their genes aren't capable of. For example, if a plant can't breathe without moving itself, it will need to grow a leg, but a plant isn't capable of doing that. So monkeys won't be able to grow a larger brain to think and walk on two legs if their genes aren't capable of that. My last point is an intelligence gap. Many humans are the most advanced species in the world. Mainly because of our intelligence, we have the ability to use a language, imagine things, but animals can only communicate about things that exist. For example, if there's a bear in front, they can warn their friends about danger. But we can imagine that there might be a bear there, even though if there isn't one there. So I have a graph of our human intelligence. As you can see, there's a huge gap between us, our intelligence, and other animals. So if evolution was true, there should be another organism between the gap. But actually, there is nothing between that. The next most intelligent animal is a chimp, and it is way below us. So in conclusion, I believe that evolution should not be the only way to describe life today. There should be another way. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kristen, and today I will be speaking for the opposing side, who believes that the theory of evolution is not fact and that is indeed false. I would like to start off by rebutting a few of my opponents. Joyce from the opposing side has mentioned that most useless organs really have no useless organs. That's what whatever the V word is for the organs, that's what those things are. They're just useless organs. However, most useless organs have been proven to found use. Specifically, she used the example of the human appendix. However, the human appendix stores good bacteria in humans for the digestive system. And it is proven that humans without their appendix are more likely to be prone to stomach diseases and other diseases affecting our digestive system. Also, a few of my opponents have used the example of Darwin's finches, which are really world-renowned and known as like a poster child for evolution. However, a 2018 study done by Dr. Nathaniel T. Jensen shows that this is actually consistent with the young Earth creation theory. And I will explain that by saying, basically, the group of finches that were on the main island, they had children and they were hetero, which means that they had X, big X, and little x. Basically, the breakaway group of finches that Darwin found on a separate island, they were the offspring of the parents on the main island, which therefore means that they are a breakaway population. And because the parents were hetero, the homozygous recessive probability and chance increased. Now, I would like to put into perspective how honestly crazy and unlikely evolution is. Starting off with the first thing of time. It's supposed to take billions of years to evolution to occur, and even though this is disputed, it's somewhere around 3.8 billion, I think, for how long the span of evolution is supposed to occur. However, time, as my opponent said, doesn't make something possible. And also, I would like to point out that my opponent's evidence in the fossil gap record and the intelligence gap of being able to create a mind like a human's by chance. My opponents have failed to address how unlikely this is to occur. And so I would like to ask the opponents, do you really believe that 1 over 100 to the 136 power chance of being able to form a protein consisting of 100 amino acids is possible? Thank you. Oh my
Morning everyone, I'm David. Our team's position is that other theorists have questioned and assaulted the theory of evolution for many decades, but no one can actually propose a constructive evidence to refute the whole evolution theory, such as the point my teammate Peter mentioned, what is before the Big Bang or how did the Big Bang happen?
You might not be able to answer these questions, which nobody can prove it now. Some people will say that, oh, it's God made it. Then do we have a method, do we have a scientific method to verify God actually exists? By contrast, more and more evidences are now strongly supporting the evolution is a fact, such as those 5 arguments advanced by my teammates. Moreover, it can be sure that there must be more than 5 aspects of evidences to sustain the theory of evolution. The evolutionary evidences were verified by logical, rigorous reasoning. Although today's technology is not progressive enough for people to fully identify the truth, with more experiments being conducted, more clues being observed, the puzzles of evolution will eventually be completed by us. Thank you for listening.
Okay, we now move to the rebuttal. I think questions, challenge is being thrown. Who wants to take the first? The challenge your answer. 1 minute. I think Connor has been named. You need to answer that. Okay. And also Joyce. Okay. Okay. Go ahead. 1 minute.
Okay. So hi, I'm Connor. So I believe my question in part has been answered by my teammate Kirsten, but I have some questions about the question itself. First of all, the 2 structures in the whale were called useless organisms. I would like to ask, did you mean useless bone structures? And also, I would like to concur on what Kirsten said that there are uses that we might not know of. For many years, people thought the tailbone, the appendix had no uses in the human body. But yet, in past decades, we've realized that there are new uses for them that we never realized that were there. So can you tell me 100% that there are literally no uses to these useless structures in the whale's body? Thank you.
I think, Joyce, the question was addressed to you. Okay, she needs to take some time to think. Any other challenges now? Sorry?
Can I ask a few more questions?
Yes, please. You have 1 minute. Say your name again, please.
Okay, my name is Eric. So for Wally, you said like the horses evolved with 3 toes earlier, and they turned to one toes at the end. But how to explain that according to the fossil records of South America? That is the opposite. And also, the first horses, the Eohippus, is actually a hyrax, which is a rodent, not a horse. And also directed to Sunny, like you said, the early birds are transitional fossils, proving like dinosaurs have linked to birds. But according to evolution theory itself, it states that only genes that are advantageous will be passed on. Why would a dinosaur trade 2 useful limbs that could be used for grabbing to 2 clumsy limbs that cannot do anything when it does not have feathers yet and cannot fly or support itself anyway useful? Okay, I have one last question.
Wait until next time.
Okay, fine, I'll go next time.
Okay, answer, Willie. Okay. The toe person. Willie, can you answer or you need time? Can you answer him? Okay, great. Okay, do you have any question on the proposition side? I think there were questions thrown at Edwin. Let's even the field. Okay, you have a question? Go ahead.
Answer the question.
You want to answer the question?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Answer. To who? To whose question?
Hi everyone. I'm going to answer Koki, right? Yes, I'm going to answer the question that it is because the extra useless fin was not affects the fish's death or survival. So there are no big amount decreasing of the individuals, which the gene will be keep over generation. That's why the extra thin, the phenotypes is still seen nowadays. Also, the life cycle of this kind of fish is quite long. It takes maybe decades something, and also they lay a little eggs each reproduction, about 20 something each time. And moreover, this kind of fish, only one male will only pair with one female, and it causes a less probability of the mutation. As a result, we cannot say that the fishes do not have natural selection, but a really slow speed of natural selection. That's my answer of the question. Thank you.
You will answer Koki's question, you should be looking at him. Oh. Not somewhere else. Okay, Koki, you want to respond?
Oh, sure, why not?
You're not forced to.
Oh, wait, I don't need this. Well, it's just notes. Okay. So if you said that it doesn't distract them, but it's useless. So if it's useless, why didn't it go away? Because, for example, if we have a room and it's an organism, there's a lot of trash, it's useless. Would you throw it away or will you keep it? You would throw it away, right? I don't think anyone will keep them. Yeah, so I think if it was useless, it would have gone away. And you talked about how the fish, it only produces one egg per time.
Quite less egg to compare with other kinds of fishes.
Lesser eggs.
This kind of fish maybe lays maybe 20 something per times, but for example, another fish, molar, it lay maybe quite millions of eggs each time.
So it reproduces slower than other. Okay, so if a creature is they're
15 more seconds.
Their goal is to reproduce more and more into the world, right? So if they reproduce less, why didn't they mutate to reproduce more? Because I thought they were gonna evolve. They were supposed to evolve, so they would evolve to reproduce more, right?
Okay, thanks. Who hasn't? Okay, good.
Megan. Okay. So in the very, very beginning, I don't know if you remember, but Peter tried to rebut one of my points by saying that cells can form without oxygen in the ocean. But actually there's this thing called hydrolysis, which is the chemical breakdown of a compound due to reaction with water. So it'll actually split the molecules so that they can't form in the ocean either. So I would like to hear what you have to say about that.
Okay. Now Joyce is ready to answer.
You say whale bones. Yes. Have you ever seen whale walk? Then you can explain it is not useless. And I want to explain appendix. If it's not useless, when you see a doctor, you have an inflammation, doctor will call you cut it. If you have a maybe heart problem, the doctor will call you cut it? No. Will call you to transplant it. Okay, that's all.
Okay, Eric.
Eric's answering for me.
Okay.
Okay, first, if your arm is bleeding like crazy or it's infected terribly and it's literally killing you, your doctor will tell you, cut it! For it will prevent you from dying of infection. And also, although whales don't walk, their hip bones are not vestigial structures. It is actually vital for whale reproduction. I will not go into the details of how they, but just note, it is important because without their pelvic bones, whales cannot actually reproduce. So they are not vestigial structures.
Wait a minute, okay. They need time to formulate their Any question? Okay, Willie is ready.
You said the 3 frontal and the 1 frontal are same species. We don't know, but we can only indicate that they have the similar structure of these organisms. They have similar structure, so we can say they have the high relationship of the organisms. And you say you have the outside evidence of this. Can you show me? Thank you.
Okay. He demands evidence.
Eric's the one who spoke that.
Okay. Okay. Any other challenge next? Answers?
Wait a sec. I will be able to.
Okay. Go ahead. Yeah. Hold on, Eric.
Okay, so I think it was Tim. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Tim. Tim mentioned that life basically comes from proteins because proteins make cells. I don't remember the exact content, but wait. So basically, if all life started from proteins, then am I related to that palm tree outside? Like, that doesn't really make sense. And I thought all life started from cells, like a single cell, which contained proteins. So, like, did the proteins just jump out and make another form of life? I'm a bit confused. So, can you please clarify this? Because my mind is running around trying to figure out what you're trying to say.
Okay. Okay, Jim. Wait a minute. Okay. So who's next? Eric.
Okay, in response to Wally's question about my outside source, you can look into the article, Horse Evolution Fraud Exposed 60 Years Ago Still in Textbooks, and a question mark at the end. And it states that South American fossils go from 1-toe to 3-toe reverse order in its, as a quotation. And also, by the way, I almost forgot to mention this. A 3-toed and 1-toed, like 3-toed and 1-toed horse actually grazed side by side according to fossil evidence. What do you have to say about that? And also, I have another question. So, a pig have 98% similarity to human DNA. An orangutan have only 97. Yet the orangutan and humans belong to, I think, the same family, and the pigs belong to the same class as human, meaning that the pigs, according to what the scientists believe, should be far more distant to human, according to, evolution terms. Then why do they have closer genetic relationships to human beings?
Okay, I think answers. Wait, you should be ready. Okay, who wants to answer? Okay, Edward.
As you have mentioned that if the extra fin is useless, how don't they throw them? If they want to throw them away, but the phenotype, or you throw away the phenotype, or you cut it, the extra fin is still keep in your DNA, and you cannot say that you cut the fin and your next generation will do not have the fin because the phenotype was kept in your DNA. For another example, that's the appendix in human body. Maybe if you feel pain and doctor called you to cut it and you cut it, but your son or your daughter still have this appendix, right? That's my opinion.
Can you explain how this connects to anything?
Okay, we need to keep the sequence. Ed, you ready to answer, Ed? You ready? Tim, sorry.
Tree and the human's nitrogen species is the same as the ATGC, so we have a relationship with the tree. And protein is the same as this. Okay, so this is my answer.
Who's next? Joyce? Who was ready to answer? Okay, Kobe. Yeah.
Okay, so I think you're misunderstanding me. I didn't mean, by cut, I didn't mean physically cutting it off. Like, it's not like surgery and then you cut the fins off. I meant by like mutation, like because it's useless, so it slowly disappears because they never use it. Like, for example, dinosaurs' arms, Tyrannosaurus Rex, their hands, it became smaller and smaller because it was useless and they never used it. So, yeah, I think okay, yeah. And can I ask another question?
Okay, let's wait. Do you have other answer questions before that? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so never mind.
Okay, in the interest of time, the refreshments, I want you to enjoy refreshments and also for informal exchanges. One last challenge is from each side. Last challenge. Okay.
Okay, I want to talk about one guy I heard said, like, I forgot. DNA brought life to different species, right? But if you think about it, the chromosomes in humans are locked. So there's only 46. And if you have one more chromosome, then there would be problems to your body. And if you want to produce another species, that would possibly mean that two species mate together. So if you think about humans and cows mating together, that would be wrong. And that probably doesn't work. That wouldn't work at all because the chromosome number would be different. Therefore, there would be problems in the babies. Or maybe the babies wouldn't even form. Okay. I'm done.
Okay.
Hello everyone. I want to answer the question that I don't know who said that carbon dating is unreliable. You probably don't know that there are many radioactive elements can dating more accurate and they can date more the time more longer than carbon dating. Yeah, that's my point. Thank you.
Okay. So, the thing is that is not only directed to carbon dating. The candle example I used applied to everything. Every single radioactive isotope that you can think of, because you never really know how much there is to begin with. You never really know if they could actually be affected by an outside source and how fast they are deteriorating. So, my case still stands that radiometric measurements are not reliable because you are not able to make sure how, they connect to how the thing actually is because there's variables that can affect it.
Okay, last answer to it. This is fundamental. Okay, you guys are students of earth science. This is fundamental earth science. You should be able to answer. Anyone? Otherwise, you all pass. You have any last challenge?
No, sit down.
Anyone? Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Peter again. And as I know, anaerobic bacteria also live in the ocean earlier, and first fossil record we found is in Australia or somewhere that is produced by cyanobacteria. So we all believe cyanobacteria is the first organism, and aerobic bacteria also live in the ocean. So let's note out what I said. The first organism is showed up in the ocean and evolved into terrestrial organism. Thank you.
This week's debate, and just go to refreshment. You can